Alright, welcome back to a new touch designer tutorial. And on this one we're going to look at this really funky texture right here. And I'm just going to quickly go over my initial idea with this, and it kind of evolved into something slightly different, as it kind of does with feedback loops, right? So my initial idea was just to create a texture of points, as we're still doing here. So kind of like a starry sky, a lot of random points, and then to displace that, right? So we're kind of making this point soup right here, and then to kind of draw that movement onto the screen by using feedback. So kind of just making trails of that. Yeah, as I said, it evolved a bit further. I added some more displacement in here, and it just looks a lot funkier and almost looks like a shader, I would say. Yeah, I think we can just dive into this and get started. All right, so as usual, I'm just gonna go ahead and delete everything. And we are going to start with a noise, as we so often do. I'm gonna change the resolution to 1000 by 1500 because I really like to work in a 4:3 aspect ratio recently, but you can change this to whatever you want. Just make sure that you're in 8-bit fixed. That's actually needed for this kind of sketch. All right, and then what we want to do is animate this. So I'm just gonna do that here on the X actually. There's no specific reason. But yeah, you can just animate it any way you want. Oh, actually 0.3, not 0.03. All right, and then what we can do is we could also just go ahead and just change it to random. But we kind of want to animate it, so it makes more sense to go to Simplex 3D or Perlin 3D and then change the period down to something really small like 0.01. So now you can maybe see here that it's very slowly changing, which is kind of what we're going for. We can leave all of this as it is. We just go down with the harmonic gain a bit and with our exponent to 0.5 and also our amplitude to 0.5. So our textures should look something like this. So to make it more like kind of stars or like a, points and not just like a completely filled texture, what we can do is add a function top and simply change your function RGBA to input, whatever that roof is called, still don't know, exponent. And just gonna change the value here to like 20. And that gets rid of most of the noise and kind of just these points are being left over, which is exactly what we're going for. Cool, so let's add a displace. And on our displace, I'm just going to go down to the displace weight of 0.05 on both axes. And I'm going to add a noise here. So this is all nothing revolutionary or new, but the outcome still, it's still very cool. All right, so on our noise, I'm going to just change the seed. And I also want to animate this actually, and this time I'm going to do it on the Z translation here. So ABS time dot seconds times 0.2. And then on my noise, I am going to change the period to 3, harmonics to 1, and both of these here to 0.5. I'm going to add a slope to this, but we're just going to bypass it for now. I'm going to look at that later. I'm going to put that in here. So you can see this displacement is already working kind of nicely, but we're getting these weird lines. That's because our extend is set to hold. We just might want to set this to mirror, and then we get a nice, we don't really see these kind of edges there. So I'm going to add a blur to this. I'm going to bypass it as well for now. I'm just going to add a channel mix and just get rid of the alpha. All right, so I'm going to add a feedback, of course, because we're going to do a feedback loop. I'm going to add a keyboard into this, as I always do, so I can reset my pulse with 1. And then I'm going to add a level to this. Yeah, we're going to add a lot more stuff, but let's just start with this. I'm going to put this in here and just change the order and put that back on my feedback. And I'm not going to put this to like multiply, but over for now. So you can kind of see what I was going for originally. So I'm just going to add a null, call it BG. And on my level, I'm going to go down with my opacity. So just so you can see what I was originally going for, and you can totally already play with this. I think it's kind of interesting. Like one problem here is that our noise is actually not set to 32-bit float or 16-bit, doesn't really matter, but we should definitely set this to something higher than 8-bit. All right, so that's already really nice, right? And it's a very simple way. So I was kind of happy that this is working out, but then again, as I said, I took this a bit further. So what we might want to do here is add another displace inside of the feedback, and then to add a noise from here. Let's again change it to just noise. Just want to change the seed again, the period, and maybe go down with the harmonic gain a bit. Gonna change my amplitude to like 0.2, maybe 0.24, because it's, you know, my favorite number, the magic number for me. I'm gonna put that into the displace, and obviously that's gonna go crazy first, because first off we need to turn off monochrome as well, and of course we're gonna go down with the displace weight quite drastically, so maybe 0.004. So you can already see the movement is getting a bit more interesting, right? Instead of this, it's like it's creating more of these kind of traily effects, which is great. So again, you can also just go with this, and you can go ahead and animate this noise as well. So you might want to both animate the X and the Z or something. So maybe it's time.seconds times 0.12. That's what I just went for, and here maybe just 0.1, so it's something different. And now it's like it makes the whole thing even more interesting. So that's nice, but let's take it even further. So first off, on my level, I don't actually want to go down with my opacity, and I want to change my operation here to screen. So first off, that looks worse, but what we can do now is we can change our brightness and gamma and contrast. So I'm going to go down with my gamma to like 0.99. Same for my brightness, 0.99. And by the way, at the end here, I'm going to add a transform and just add my, like a black background. This looks a lot better. Okay, so this is already a bit more interesting, I would say. And we might want to go up with the contrast as well to like 1.01. And actually I found out a nice value here is 0.985. You know, it's kind of typical for working with feedback loops that you're working. There's a really small range of values. So I found out this kind of connection of different values here works really well. Okay, so that's already interesting, but still not what I showed you in the beginning, right? So first off, what we can do is we can add our feedback back into our noise, and that really creates an interesting effect here. Another thing that we might want to do to add, like very subtly add color, what we can do is we can go down with our like channels here, whatever channels you want, but I'm just going to go down with green and blue a bit, so like 0.98. And that's going to create a kind of very slight yellow touch to it. Like if you go down further with it, you're going to see it more drastically. And I think that looks pretty cool. It's a bit different than, you know, just adding a ramp at the end, because it kind of changing the color before the feedback loop is going to affect the feedback loop, of course. Now you can already see that red is quite strong here. That's why I went up with it. It's just very slight. I kind of think subtlety is a very important part of, especially in feedback loops, but like generative art and generally. All right, so to kind of, I mean, it already looks nice, but I don't really like the fact that it's like spread all over the canvas in kind of the same way, more or less. So what we can do here is to add another composite, and to just leave that as multiply. We might want to add another noise here. And on my noise here, I'm going to change the period to 3, harmonics to 1, harmonic spread to 1.5, and maybe go down with the amplitude a bit. Let's change it to just noise again. And again, we might want to animate this, of course, as we do always. I mean, for this, as we're doing so much noise animation, you might even just want to add like a custom parameter or a constant or something to change the speed on all of them kind of at the same time. Might be better, but yeah, never mind. So I'm just going to put that in here. And now we can already see what I was going for, right? Because now we have these kind of black parts and it's more dynamic. It's not, the whole canvas is kind of, as we can see here, it's not all the same. It's like being displaced in different ways, but still kind of the same. And here we have like brighter and darker parts, and I think that makes it more interesting. Cool. So we've also looked at the slope, and I think the slope makes the displacement a bit more interesting, so you can't like see that it's just noise so easily. So I'm gonna go up with the strength to 700 and sample step to 100. And I think that makes the movement more interesting. But it's really just like, you know, in the end, it doesn't really matter which one you take. And this is another thing. You can just use this and put it into the noise here, and then it's going to make the noise a bit more interesting, right? So you can see here, that's just kind of standard noise. And this way, it just looks a bit more interesting. It's kind of linked to the original displacement as well. So, yeah, I think that's pretty cool. We might want to even add some blur here, just very slightly, maybe just like 2 or 3, right? Again, subtlety makes a difference, right? I think you can kind of see here, you can still see all of the points, and if you add the blur, it's only the more chunky kind of things. I don't know how to call that. What we could also do, like if we had our green and blue down stronger here, and there's more like intense color to counter that, what you could do is add an HSV adjust inside of the loop and just go down with the saturation slightly to like 0.95 maybe. So that would be one thing to consider, but I'm just gonna go up with this again. And then another thing here is that we can also add another blur inside of the feedback loop. A nice thing to do to have more control here, instead of just changing the filter size, to go down with the filter step. I'm just gonna go to 0.2, and then I can more in a more detailed way, I can kind of change the filter size. I'm just gonna go up to 10. So again, this is a very slight difference, but I think the outcome looks really nice. Okay, so let's look at some post-processing. So first off, definitely add a level so you're in control of contrast and everything. And I would just go up with the brightness a bit, and the contrast maybe to like 0.2, and then the gamma to like 0.9. So just getting rid of that a bit, maybe even more brightness. Something like that, I think should be good. Looks pretty nice. And then of course it's always kind of nice to add a noise at the end. The 5th one. And to just add that on top very slightly, like 0.06 and 0.05. You know, just so we have some kind of more interesting noise there. Maybe go down with the gamma now. Yeah, also go down with the noise scale, 0.5. Again, that's a very subtle thing, but I think it adds a bit of, it just makes the whole thing look a bit more interesting. And then, of course, you could also add an open color IO, as I did actually. So one might want to add a cross here and then add an open color IO to add a LUT, right? So we can put that in here. I'm just gonna copy my file source. I'm basically just taking a LUT here. I've got a video on that, so I think again it can add some color and just makes the whole thing look a bit cooler. One last thing that you can consider doing here is to add a luma blur, and we could just add a level from here. Put that into the luma blur, and actually let's go up with the black filter width. So we're kind of making the darker parts blurred, and then we might want to go up with the brightness and contrast here. Maybe not the brightness so much. Maybe go down with the gamma, something like that. But so now you can see the darker parts are being blurred, which also makes it more dynamic, right? I kind of like it actually kind of sharp, but I think it's a very interesting look as well. So definitely, yeah, I don't know, maybe it's even better. I'm not sure. But all of these things you can just play around with, and as always, you can mess with all of these things. You don't technically have to use a noise. What you could even think about if you're like really into tops is to create like attractors or repellents or something like that within this kind of noise space here, or like this top space, because in the end we're really kind of imitating a particle movement, you could say. So you might want to think about that. And yeah, let's just add some, I'm just going to turn this off for a second. Let's just add some comments to make this very clean. So I'm just going to add an annotation here and call that noise setup, or like particle setup, whatever you want to call it really. But so in the end we kind of have these 3 different parts. So I'm going to again add another one here, just call it feedback. And then this is all of our like post-processing. So might not want to include that, and then just call it post-processing. And we might want to give these some colors. Dark colors work the best, I noticed. All right. Whoops. Cool. So there we go. I hope you enjoyed this video. I just want to thank you for supporting me. I really, really appreciate it. I'm so grateful that you all supported me through my sickness. And I'm very happy to be back with tutorials. So thank you. Thank you dearly. And I'll see you in the next video.